Emma grew up behind iron gates in a world of pure luxury. Private schools, designer bags, and parties that cost more than most people earn in an entire year. And right next door, in a tiny house with peeling paint, lived Mrs. Harper. She was an elderly widow, just scraping by on a small pension. Emma saw her every single day, but she never really saw her. She'd ignore the old woman's quiet greetings, roll her eyes at the overgrown yard, and even complain to her parents about that eyesore next door. One afternoon, Mrs. Harper waved weakly from her porch. "I made some cookies for you, dear," she called out. But Emma didn't stop. She didn't even look back. She had no idea that the neighbor she had ignored for years, the one she looked down on, would soon become the only person who could save everything she loved. What happened next will shock you and restore your faith in the power of quiet kindness. At 24, Emma was beautiful, confident, and completely used to getting whatever she wanted. Her father had built a massive real estate empire from the ground up, and she was the sole heir, set to inherit it all. Her life was, from the outside, absolutely perfect. She would speed past Mrs. Harper's little house every day in her sports car without a single glance. To Emma, the old woman was just background noise, a person from a completely different, irrelevant world. Mrs. Harper, on the other hand, had a world of memories in that little house. She'd lived there for 50 years, raising 3 children with her late husband. After he passed away and the kids moved far from home, her days were simple. She tended a small garden, baked to fill the silence, and watched the neighborhood transform around her. She always noticed Emma, that bright, busy girl next door, and she always hoped to make a connection. She'd leave a few flowers from her garden on the gate, wave hello when Emma's car drove by, and yes, she even tried baking cookies a few times. But Emma never once acknowledged her, not even with a nod. Then, in a single moment, everything changed. Emma's father suffered a massive stroke. The doctors gave him less than a week to live. And while he lay unconscious in a hospital bed, a devastating truth came crashing down. The company, the source of all their wealth, was drowning in hidden debt. Investors panicked and pulled out. Lawsuits started pouring in like a tidal wave. Within a few short months, the family lost nearly everything. The sprawling mansion went into foreclosure. The luxury cars were repossessed. All their bank accounts were frozen. Emma, who had never worked a single day in her life, could only watch in stunned silence as her entire world collapsed. And then came the cruelest twist of all. The bank wasn't just coming for their mansion. It was coming for Mrs. Harper's little house, too. It turned out there had been a property line dispute for decades. Emma's father had been quietly trying to use legal loopholes to claim a part of Mrs. Harper's yard to expand their estate. Now, with the company's bankruptcy, the bank saw an opportunity. They wanted to seize both properties together to cover the massive debts. Mrs. Harper received an eviction notice. Emma, now living in a tiny, cramped apartment, felt a bitter, ugly resentment. A small, dark part of her thought, "Good, at least someone else is losing, too." She was so lost in her own misery, she couldn't see the injustice happening right next door to the woman she'd always ignored. One morning, there was a knock on Emma's apartment door. It was a lawyer, a man she'd never seen before. Confused, she followed him to a small, unassuming office downtown. And there, sitting quietly in a chair, dressed in her simple Sunday best, was Mrs. Harper. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. "Mrs. Harper has come forward with some documents," he said, his voice serious. "Documents that change, well, everything." He laid out a stack of old, yellowed papers on the desk. There were property deeds, handwritten letters, and land surveys from over 50 years ago. The story they told was astonishing. It turned out that Mrs. Harper's late husband had personally helped Emma's own grandfather buy the land for their mansion all those years ago. He'd sold it to him for a fraction of its worth, on one single condition, a condition recorded in a legal covenant, an ironclad agreement, that Mrs. Harper's little house and her land would be protected forever. No bank, no creditor, no future owner could ever touch it, but there was more. The covenant also gave Mrs. Harper the right to block any forced sale of the neighboring property, the mansion, if that sale would leave the original family, Emma's family, homeless. She held the legal power to stop the foreclosure on Emma's childhood home. The lawyer looked directly at Emma, whose mind was reeling. "Mrs. Harper is willing to enforce this covenant," he said slowly. "She is willing to stop the bank from taking your family home." Emma just stared, her mouth open in disbelief. The woman she had treated like she was invisible for her entire life, the neighbor whose kindness she had rejected time and time again, was now the only one standing between her and losing the very last thing she had left. In that small lawyer's office, Emma completely broke down. The years of arrogance and pride shattered, and she sobbed uncontrollably. For the very first time in her life, she truly saw Mrs. Harper, not as a poor, insignificant old neighbor, but as a woman of incredible strength, quiet grace, and unbelievable kindness. Mrs. Harper simply reached over and patted her hand. She smiled gently and said, "I always knew your family needed that house just as much as I needed mine. We're neighbors, dear. That's supposed to mean something." Emma and her father, who was slowly recovering, moved back into the mansion. But everything was different now. The parties and the fancy cars were gone, replaced by something far more valuable. Emma spent every weekend next door with Mrs. Harper. They worked in the garden together. They baked cookies in that tiny kitchen. And Emma would listen for hours to stories about the past, about a life of love, loss, and resilience. Inspired by Mrs. Harper's quiet generosity, Emma started a small foundation in her name, dedicated to helping elderly neighbors fight eviction and stay in their homes. She had finally learned a lesson that no private school could ever teach her. We never know who's watching us or who holds the key to our future in their hands. The people we ignore, the ones we look down on or pass by without a second thought, might just be the angels placed in our path to teach us humility, gratitude, and the true meaning of wealth. Because real riches aren't found behind iron gates or inside sprawling mansions. They're found in the quiet, kind hearts living right next door. Have you ever been surprised by kindness from someone you may have overlooked? Share your story in the comments below. Let's inspire each other with these moments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories with shocking twists that will warm your heart. Thanks for watching.